Okay. Have you ever been in a meeting and you have these amazing ideas,
Mm-hmm.
but you just can't seem to get them out? Like, you should speak up,
Right.
but something's holding you back.
Yeah.
Turns out it's super common.
Really?
Yeah, over 70% of professionals say they struggle with this.
Wow, that many.
I know, it's crazy, right? And it's not just, people who aren't native English speakers or anything like that.
Yeah.
It can even happen to, like, super experienced executives.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I read this thing about a senior executive in New York, like super successful,
Mm-hmm.
been doing this forever, and he still gets nervous before board meetings.
It's interesting because a lot of people think, like, at a certain point, you just get over those nerves.
Right.
But it's more about, like, mastering how to communicate in those situations.
Yeah, because the stakes are so high.
Exactly. And you need to learn how to use your voice strategically, not just to give information,
But to really, like,
influence what happens.
yeah, influence people, get your point across. So in this deep dive, we're going to go way beyond just basic meeting tips.
Okay.
We're going to look at what top business leaders do, like their secrets,
Go.
how to use psychology to be more persuasive, even how to deal with cultural differences in meetings.
Especially these days when everyone's working with people from all over the world.
Yeah, global teams, virtual meetings, it's a whole new game.
Totally. So think of this deep dive as like a master class in how to totally crush it in any meeting.
I like that masterclass. I'm ready to sign up.
No matter where you are or who you're talking to.
Okay, so you talk about these professional phrase power tools. I love that. What's that all about?
Well, just imagine like a really good chef.
Okay.
They're not going to use the same knife for everything, right?
Right, different tools for different jobs.
It's kind of the same business. The words you use are tools.
Huh, that's interesting.
And they may seem small, but using the right phrase at the right time, it can make a huge difference in how your message comes across.
I can see that, yeah.
It can totally change people's perception of you.
You know, it reminded me of this story I read about a manager in Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
She had all these good ideas, but she kept saying stuff like, I think maybe we could.
Oh, yeah.
And it just seemed like she lost a little credibility every time she said it.
That's a really good point because it's so common
Yeah.
to use those kind of wishy-washy phrases.
But imagine if she'd said something like, based on our market research, I propose.
Right. Total game changer.
Same idea, but it sounds so much more,
Confident.
yeah, like she knows what she's talking about.
Exactly. These professional phrase power tools. It's like a secret language.
A secret language. Okay, I like that.
That tells people you've thought things through. You're not just throwing out ideas.
You're strategic.
Yes. And you can use them to show you're an expert, get people on your side, and just handle tough situations really smoothly.
I'm starting to see how this could be really powerful.
It is.
So, can you give me some examples? Like, what are some of these power phrases?
So for example, let's say you want to add to what someone else just said. Instead of just saying, I agree, you could say something like, if I may build upon that point.
Oh, I see. It's more,
It shows you're engaged, thinking critically.
yeah, not just passively agreeing.
Exactly. You're actively participating and adding value.
Okay, I like that. What about if you disagree with someone?
Good one. So instead of just saying, I disagree, which can sound a little harsh, you could try, while I appreciate that perspective, I'd like to offer an alternative view.
Okay, so it's about being respectful but still firm.
Right. You acknowledge their point, but you also make it clear that you have a different opinion.
You know, it's funny because I actually catch myself using those weaker phrases.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like I think, or maybe they just slip out sometimes.
Yeah, I'll do it.
But I never realized how much they might be undermining what I'm trying to say.
It's easy to overlook the impact of those little words, but they can make a big difference.
They really can.
It's amazing once you start paying attention how much those small changes can impact how people perceive you.
So are there like different types of power phrases?
Definitely. Some are good for establishing your expertise without sounding like you're bragging.
Okay, I need those.
For example, instead of, I know this because, you could say, from my experience in similar situations.
Oh, that's a good one.
It subtly positions you as someone who knows what they're talking about.
I actually used that exact phrase in a meeting last week.
Really?
And it's weird, but it felt like people started paying more attention to me.
See? It worked.
I thought it was just a coincidence.
It's the power of language.
That's incredible. Okay, so this is already blowing my mind. But what about asking questions? How do power phrases work with that?
That's a great question because questions are so important in meetings.
Yeah,
You know, sometimes asking the right question is more effective than making a statement.
that's true. It can really guide the conversation.
Exactly. So instead of a basic question like, what about the budget? You could say something like, could you elaborate on how this strategy aligns with our current budgetary constraints?
Oh, wow.
It shows you're thinking strategically.
It sounds so much smarter.
And you're more likely to get a thoughtful answer.
Okay, I'm totally on board with these power phrases.
Great.
But it can't just be about the words, right?
Right. Your delivery matters, too.
Like how you say it.
Exactly. You could have the most perfect phrases, but if your voice doesn't match,
That's not going to land.
people won't take you seriously.
Yeah, that's where voice projection comes in.
Yes. And so many people don't even think about it.
I know, especially with so many virtual meetings now.
I know, especially with so many virtual meetings now.
Exactly, but your voice is your instrument.
It's how we connect with people.
And how you show your passion, your knowledge, your confidence.
I remember reading about this brilliant engineer.
Mm-hmm.
She had all these great ideas,
Yeah.
but she spoke so softly that people just tuned her out.
It happens more often than you think. And again, I used to think speaking loudly meant, like, shouting,
Yeah.
which felt so unnatural to me.
No, it's not about shouting at all.
Okay, good.
It's about using your voice to command attention and respect.
Whether you're in person or online.
Exactly.
So where do we start?
Believe it or not, with your posture.
What, like how I'm sitting?
Even if you're on a video call, your posture affects your breathing and how you project your voice.
I have to admit, sometimes I slouch during those long meetings.
We all do it.
Yeah.
But if you sit up straight, shoulders relaxed, chest open, it not only helps you breathe better, it makes you look and sound more confident.
It's amazing how much our bodies affect our voices.
They're totally connected.
Okay, so posture is key. What else?
Breathing.
Yeah.
A lot of people try to project from their throat,
Oh, yeah.
which is wrong. You'll get tired and your voice won't sound good.
So how are we supposed to breathe?
From your diaphragm.
For my what?
Your diaphragm. It's the muscle that helps you breathe deeply.
Okay, so like belly breathing, not chest breathing.
Exactly. It's a subtle shift, but it makes a huge difference.
Okay, I can try that. What about volume, though?
Well, for virtual meetings, there's a trick I call the 45-degree rule.
Okay, what's that?
Instead of talking right onto the microphone, angle it away from your mouth, about 45 degrees.
Really? That sounds weird.
It might feel strange, but it actually makes your voice sound fuller and richer.
Huh. I'll have to try that.
It captures the natural resonance of your voice.
Okay, so posture, breathing, microphone angle. Got it.
You getting it?
What about sounding monotone? Like, sometimes I feel like I'm just droning on.
That's another common problem,
Yeah.
especially online.
Yeah.
But think about how you'd tell an interesting story.
Okay.
Your voice naturally goes up and down. You emphasize certain words.
Yeah, you add some drama to it.
Exactly. We want to do the same thing in meetings.
So we need to add more vocal variety.
Yes. Different pitches, tones, pacing. It keeps people engaged.
Okay, so far we've got posture, breathing, volume, and vocal variety.
You're doing great.
What else can we do to really nail this voice projection thing?
This one might surprise you. The strategic pause.
The pause.
Yes. I know it can feel awkward,
It does.
but those little moments of silence after you say something important,
Mm-hmm.
they can be really effective.
Really?
Yeah, it gives people time to think about what you just said,
Okay, I see.
and it builds anticipation for what you're going to say next.
Huh, like a cliffhanger in a movie.
Exactly.
Okay, so instead of rushing through my ideas, I should pause more.
Yes. Embrace the power of the pause. Let your words sink in.
I can try that.
You'll be amazed at how much more impact your words will have.
This is all great advice, but it seems like a lot to think about during a meeting.
I know, it's a lot.
Well, I'm trying to remember my main points and everything else.
Well, that's why I recommend doing a little power prep before your next important meeting.
A power prep.
It's a quick routine, just 30 seconds, to get your voice and mind ready.
Okay, I can handle 30 seconds.
First, stand or sit up tall. Roll your shoulders back and take 2 deep breaths, filling your diaphragm.
Got it.
Then pick a complex word or phrase and say it out loud. Feel the resonance in your chest.
Mm-hmm.
And lastly, just visualize yourself in the meeting, speaking with confidence and clarity.
Wow, 30 seconds is all it takes.
Yep. It's amazing how much of a difference it can make.
I'll definitely try that.
And what about those times when you start talking at the same time as someone else?
Oh, God, that's so awkward.
It happens to everyone, but here's the trick.
Okay.
Keep your voice steady, smile, and use a power phrase like, please go ahead and I'll add my perspective afterward.
Oh, that's good. So instead of trailing off or getting flustered,
Exactly.
you turn it into a chance to show your
Being
perfection.
confident.
I like that.
It's about turning those little moments into opportunities.
Okay, listeners, here's your homework, and I want you to actually do this.
Okay, what is it?
Record yourself saying a phrase, any phrase, 3 times.
Oh.
First, say it normally. Second, say it while you're really focusing on your posture and breathing.
Got it.
And third, say it again, but add a pause after the phrase.
Interesting.
Then listen back and hear the difference.
I bet it'll be amazing.
It's really eye-opening.
Okay, I'm gonna try that too.
Do it. It's so cool.
Cool.
Now, let's talk about a skill that can totally change how much influence you have in meetings.
Ooh, tell me more.
The art of asking questions.
I love asking
I
questions.
do too, but I used to be kind of afraid to ask questions in meetings.
Really? Why?
I don't know, I didn't want to sound dumb or like I wasn't paying attention.
I get that, but you know what?
But
Asking the right questions in the right way can actually be more powerful than making statements.
really, more powerful.
Think about it like a courtroom.
Okay.
The lawyer's questions, they control the whole story.
Oh, that's a good point, yeah.
They use questions to guide things to make their point.
And to get to the truth.
Exactly.
Mm.
It's the same in business meetings. You're not just asking to get information. You're shaping the conversation, finding those hidden insights that lead to breakthroughs.
So it's strategic.
Totally. But I know what you're thinking.
What?
What if I ask a stupid question?
That's exactly what I was thinking. I don't want to look like I don't know what's going on.
You're not alone. Everyone's afraid of that.
But I guess if no one asks questions, then
Exactly. When you ask good, thoughtful questions, you stand out.
that makes sense.
And if you're really worried about it, there's a trick I use.
Oh, tell me.
Instead of saying, I don't understand, which sounds a bit, well,
Yeah, a bit basic.
you can say, could you help me ensure I have the complete picture?
Ooh, that's clever. It sounds so much more professional.
Right. And it shows you're really committed to understanding.
I like that.
So even if you don't get it, you can ask in a way that makes you look smart.
That's a game changer.
It is.
Okay, so we've talked about why asking questions is important, but are there different types of questions?
Oh yeah, for sure. And some are definitely better than others.
Give me the breakdown.
I call it the question ladder, like you're climbing to different levels of understanding.
Okay, I like that.
At the bottom, we have clarifying questions, just basic stuff to make sure you understand, like, could you repeat that? Or can you elaborate on that point?
Okay, those are easy. What's next?
Next up are probing questions. These are to dig deeper, like, how does this align with our long-term goals? Or what are the potential risks we should consider?
Ooh, getting a little more intense.
Right, we're climbing that ladder.
Yeah.
And at the top, the most powerful ones are strategic questions.
Oh, tell me about those.
These are the questions that can totally change the direction of the meeting.
No way.
They usually start with what if, or how might we?
Give me an example.
Like, what if we approach this problem from a completely different angle?
Oh, I see. That gets everyone thinking outside the box.
Exactly. And it can spark those aha moments that lead to amazing ideas.
This is amazing. I never thought of questions like that.
It's all about asking the right questions at the right time.
That makes sense.
And knowing what kind of question to ask, clarifying, probing, or strategic to get the best results.
So how do we figure out when to ask which type of question?
That's where timing comes in. You need to find those question windows.
Question windows, what are those?
Those moments in the conversation where your question will have the most impact.
Like a little opening?
Yeah, exactly. You got to be ready to jump in when you see one.
Okay, and what if I have multiple questions about something?
Oh, I have a strategy for that too. It's called the question stack.
Tell me more.
Instead of asking a bunch of random questions, you group them together.
Okay.
You start with a broader question, then follow up with more specific ones.
So it's more organized.
Exactly. Like, could you walk us through the implementation timeline for this project? Specifically, I'm curious about the milestones for the first quarter and how we're allocating resources.
Oh, gotcha.
It shows you're thinking strategically and you've thought things through.
Right, not just asking whatever pops into my head.
Exactly.
Okay, so clarifying questions, probing questions, strategic questions, the question ladder, and the question stack.
You got it.
I'm feeling like a question master already.
You're getting there.
But what about when you have to disagree with someone?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Especially if it's your boss or someone senior.
Yeah, you don't want to cause any trouble.
But you also don't want to just stay quiet if you think they're wrong.
Right, it's a tricky situation.
So how do we handle that?
Well, believe it or not, questions can be your secret weapon for disagreeing gracefully.
Really? How does that work?
Instead of saying, I disagree, which can sound confrontational, try asking a question like, how would this strategy address the concerns we've been having about market saturation?
Oh, that's smart.
It lets you express your concerns, but in a more diplomatic way.
You're not directly challenging them,
Exactly. You're inviting them to consider your perspective.
and it opens up a discussion instead of shutting it down.
Precisely. It's all about framing your disagreement as a collaboration.
Okay, listeners, here's your challenge for this week. I want you to prepare 3 strategic questions.
Ooh, I like this.
Before your next meeting, write them down and try to use them in the conversation.
This is good practice.
It is, and pay attention to how people respond. It's really interesting to see how a few well-crafted questions can make you so much more influential in meetings.
I bet it will. It's amazing how powerful a good question can be.
Okay, so now we're going to move into a topic that's so important in today's global business world.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
How to deal with cultural differences in meetings.
That's a big one.
It is. We're not just working with people in our own city or country anymore.
Right, it's all global teams and virtual meetings.
Exactly, and everyone has their own communication style.
And their own cultural norms.
Right, so what might be considered assertive in one culture?
Could be seen as aggressive in another.
It's like we're all speaking the same language, but with different accents and dialects.
Exactly, and if we're not careful, we can misinterpret each other.
And that can lead to all sorts of problems.
Big time. It can damage relationships and even cost companies money.
I remember reading about this marketing director from Singapore. She was really talented, but she struggled in global meetings.
Why?
She was used to listening and observing before speaking up.
Oh, so a more subtle communication style.
Exactly. But in these fast-paced Western-style meetings,
Yeah.
her silence was seen as a lack of confidence.
That's so unfair.
It was. He was basically playing by a different set of rules.
And it held her back.
It did, until she learned how to adapt her communication style.
That's so important these days, being able to adapt.
So how do we learn to decode these cultural cues?
One really effective technique is using what I call cultural bridge phrases.
Cultural bridge phrases, okay, what are those?
They're phrases that help you navigate those tricky situations where cultural differences can cause problems.
Give me an example.
Imagine you need to disagree with someone from a culture where direct confrontation is seen as rude.
Like in some Asian cultures.
Exactly. Instead of saying, I disagree, which could be offensive,
Right.
you could say, I appreciate that perspective. May I offer an additional viewpoint?
Oh, that's much softer.
It shows respect while still allowing you to express your opinion.
I like that.
These cultural bridge phrases can be really helpful for smoothing things over and keeping the conversation flowing.
It's like you're building a bridge between different cultures.
Exactly. It's all about being mindful of those subtle differences.
Okay, so it's not just about what you say, it's also about how you say it.
Right, body language is huge too.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that.
Like eye contact, in some cultures it's a sign of respect. In others, it can be seen as aggressive.
Wow, you really have to be careful.
And your volume and pace of speech, those can send different messages too.
It's a whole other level of communication.
It is, but it's so important to master if you want to be successful in today's global business world.
It's like learning a secret code.
It kind of is.
But where do we even begin to learn all this?
Well, a good place to start is by using what I call the cultural acknowledgement prefix.
The cultural acknowledgement prefix, what's that?
It's a simple way to show you're aware of cultural differences before you make your point.
Give me an example.
You could say something like, in my experience working with both Asian and European markets,
Oh, I see.
or having spent time in Latin America, I've noticed that.
So it's like you're saying, hey, I understand your culture and I'm here to collaborate with you respectfully.
Exactly. And that can go a long way in building trust and rapport.
Especially with international colleagues.
Absolutely.
Okay, listeners, I want you to try this in your next meeting with people from different cultures.
What should they do?
Use at least one cultural bridge phrase
Oh, good idea.
and pay attention to how people react.
See if you notice a difference.
You might be surprised at how much smoother the conversation goes.
It's a powerful tool, using language to bridge those cultural divides.
It really is.
And the more you practice, the more confident you'll become.
All right, so now let's talk about something everyone dreads.
What's that?
Those high-stakes situations in meetings.
Oh, the ones where you can feel the tension in the air.
Exactly, like when you have to disagree with your boss.
Or negotiate a tricky budget.
Or try to reclaim credit for an idea that got stolen.
Those situations can be super stressful.
They really can, and they can make or break your reputation.
It's true. The wrong words can damage your career.
So how do we handle these situations without making things worse?
It all comes down to choosing your words carefully and staying calm under pressure.
Easier said than done.
I know, but trust me, it's possible.
Okay, so let's say you're in a meeting and you realize the deadline for a project is totally unrealistic.
Ooh, been there.
How do you speak up, especially if there are senior people in the room?
I had a client, a project manager, who was in that exact situation.
Oh,
And he was so stressed he didn't want to rock the boat.
I get it.
But I told him, instead of saying, that's impossible,
Which would probably get you fired.
he needed to frame it in a more objective, data-driven way.
What did he say?
He said something like, I'd like to share some insights from our previous projects that had similar scopes and complexities.
Okay.
And then he showed them the data. He presented his case calmly and logically.
And they listened to it.
They did. Because he wasn't being emotional or confrontational.
He was just presenting the facts.
Exactly. And it worked.
That's a great example. So it's about using data and logic to support your point.
Yes.
Yeah.
And showing that you're thinking strategically, not just reacting emotionally.
Okay, what about when you have a brilliant idea, but it gets dismissed in a meeting,
Oh, worst.
and then someone else presents it later as their own?
That's happened to me. It's so
I
frustrating.
had a client, a marketing director, who went through that exact thing,
Really?
and she was so tempted to call out her colleague for stealing her idea.
Oh, I would be too.
But I told her, there's a better way.
What did you tell her to do?
When the idea was presented, she said, I'm so glad to see how this idea has evolved since our initial discussion last month. I've done some additional research that I think could be helpful as we move forward.
Oh, that's good.
She subtly reminded everyone of her original contribution.
Without sounding bitter or accusatory.
Exactly. And then she used the opportunity to show off her expertise.
That's brilliant. She turned it into a win.
She did, and she got the credit she deserved.
Okay, what about budget discussions? Those can get pretty heated,
They can, and it's easy to get flustered when the numbers don't add up.
especially when you're dealing with senior executives who control the purse strings.
So, what's your advice for navigating those tricky budget conversations?
It's all about diplomacy and tact.
Okay.
Instead of blurting out, those numbers are wrong,
Which is never a good idea.
try a more collaborative approach.
Like what?
You could say, I'm noticing a discrepancy between these figures and the data we've collected in our department. Would it be helpful to share our findings to ensure we're all working from the same information?
Ooh, that's a good one.
It frames the situation as a team effort to find the truth.
Instead of a battle over who's right and who's wrong.
Exactly. It takes the heat out of the conversation.
And it makes everyone feel like they're part of the solution.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered disagreeing with deadlines, reclaiming stolen ideas, and handling budget discrepancies.
We're on a roll.
But I have to ask about one of my biggest pet peeves.
What's that?
Getting interrupted in meetings.
Oh, the worst.
It's so rude and disrespectful.
Especially when you're in the middle of making an important point.
Exactly. So how do we handle interruptions gracefully without losing our cool or letting someone else hijack the conversation?
There's a technique I call the professional recovery.
Okay, tell me more.
When someone interrupts you, take a deep breath, pause briefly, and then say, if I may, I'd like to complete my earlier point as it directly relates to what was just discussed.
Oh, that's smooth.
It's assertive but polite.
And it brings the focus back to you.
Exactly. You're subtly taking back control of the conversation.
I love it. It's like a verbal judo move.
Exactly. You're using their momentum against them.
Okay, what about when your mind goes blank?
Oh, we've all been there.
It's like you suddenly forget how to speak.
It's the worst, especially when you're trying to impress someone.
So, what's the best way to handle those brain freeze moments?
I call this the professional pause.
Okay, what's the magic phrase?
Simply say, let me rephrase that to be more precise.
Oh, that's clever.
It buys you a few seconds to gather your thoughts.
Without making it obvious that you're totally lost.
Exactly. It's about maintaining your composure even when you're panicking inside.
That's a lifesaver. Okay, let's talk about the ultimate challenge.
Oh boy, what's that?
Disagreeing with your boss in a meeting.
That's a tough one,
It is, but sometimes it's necessary.
especially if you think they're making a bad decision.
Exactly. So how do we do it without getting fired?
The key is to be respectful, diplomatic, and to frame your disagreement as a constructive suggestion.
Okay, give me an example.
You could say something like, I appreciate the direction we're considering. Based on my analysis of our recent market data, I'd like to propose an alternative approach that might help us achieve our objectives more efficiently.
Oh, I see. So you're not saying they're wrong.
Right, you're just offering a different perspective.
And you're backing it up with data.
Exactly. Data is your best friend in these situations,
It makes your argument more persuasive.
and less about personal opinions.
Okay, this is all so helpful.
Glad to hear it.
But I imagine these challenging situations are even tougher in virtual meetings.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
When you don't have those in-person cues to help you read the room.
Like body language and facial expressions.
Exactly. So how do we adapt these strategies for the online world?
It takes some extra effort, but it's definitely doable.
Okay, let's break it down.
So imagine you're in a long virtual meeting and you need to interrupt to share something important.
Like time-sensitive information.
Exactly. But you don't want to be rude.
Right.
I recommend a two-channel approach.
Two-channel.
Yeah, first, use the chat feature to send a quick heads up.
Oh, like a warning.
Exactly, something like time-sensitive input regarding topic.
Okay.
Then verbally say, pardon the interruption, but I have some time-critical information that might impact our current discussion.
So you're giving them a heads up in two different ways.
Exactly. It's more likely to get their attention.
And it shows you're being respectful of their time.
Right, you're acknowledging that you're interrupting them.
That's a great tip. What about those reply all email chains that turn into virtual meeting nightmares?
Oh, those are the worst. Everyone's talking over each other. It's chaos.
Exactly. How do we bring some order to that madness?
I like to use what I call the synthesis approach.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Wait for a pause in the conversation, then jump in and say something like, if I may, I'd like to summarize the key points raised so far and propose a potential path forward.
Oh, that's good. It makes you sound like a leader.
It does, and it helps to refocus the conversation.
And get everyone back on the track. Okay, listeners, here's another challenge for you.
Okay, hit me.
Think about a challenging meeting situation that you're dreading.
Oh, we all have those.
We do, and I want you to write down 3 different ways to handle that situation.
Okay.
Use the phrases and techniques we've discussed. Be creative.
This is a good exercise.
It is. It'll help you build your communication toolkit.
So you're ready for anything.
Exactly. Now, let's shift gears and talk about how to create a strategic communication plan.
Ooh, I like that. Strategic.
It's about moving beyond just showing up to meetings
Right.
and really taking control of the conversation, influencing the outcome.
Becoming a communication master?
Yes.
I'm in.
So how do we do that?
It all starts with what I call the power-up protocol.
The power-up protocol sounds intense.
It's actually really simple. It's a 3-step process to get you ready for any meeting.
Okay, I'm ready.
Step 1, choose your power phrases.
Okay, those magic words.
Exactly. Pick 3 that feel natural to you and write them down somewhere you can see them during the meeting.
Like a cheat sheet for sounding confident.
Exactly. It'll help you stay on track.
Okay, what's step 2?
Step 2 is strategic positioning.
Strategic positioning.
Yeah, before the meeting, ask yourself, what's the one thing I absolutely need to say?
Okay,
When's the best time to say it?
all right.
And which power phrase will help me say it most effectively?
Oh, that's smart. It's like planning your attack.
Exactly. You're being proactive, not reactive.
I like it. Okay, what's the final step?
Step 3 is all about the follow-up.
A follow-up.
Don't just make your point and then go silent.
Right.
You got to be ready to engage, to reinforce your message.
Okay, how do we do that?
Use what I call reinforcement phrases.
Give me some examples.
If someone builds on your idea, you could say, thank you for expanding on that point, to add further context.
Okay.
Or, I'm glad you brought that up because it highlights a crucial element.
Oh, that's good. It keeps the conversation flowing.
And it keeps your ideas front and center.
So it's like you're subtly guiding the conversation in the direction you want it to go.
Exactly. You're not just participating, you're leading.
I love that. It's so much more than just speaking up. It's about being a strategic communicator.
Exactly.
You know, I've been thinking a lot about building a stronger professional presence, not just in meetings, but overall.
Yeah, I think that's so important these days.
It seems like communication is a big part of that.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah.
You know, it's not enough to just be good at your job anymore.
Right. You have to be able to communicate your value.
Exactly. You have to build relationships, make an impression.
It's like communication is the foundation for building your personal brand.
Exactly. Your personal brand is what people think of when they hear your name.
Or see your LinkedIn profile.
It's the sum of all your interactions, online and offline.
So how do we build a strong personal brand? Where do we even begin?
It starts with knowing yourself. What do you want to be known for?
What are my strengths, my unique skills?
Exactly. Once you figure that out, you can start incorporating it into everything you do.
So it's like a personal mission statement for your career.
Exactly.
Okay, I love that. But how do we actually go about building that brand?
One of the most important things is consistency.
Consistency.
Yeah, in your language, your tone, how you treat people, online and offline.
So, like, always being professional.
Exactly. Your online presence is a big part of your personal brand, too.
Especially on LinkedIn.
Yes. Make sure your profile shows off your expertise.
And don't forget networking.
That's huge. Going to events, connecting with people online.
But networking can be so intimidating.
I know, but remember, it's not about selling yourself.
What is it about then?
It's about building relationships, finding common ground.
So just be yourself, be genuine.
Exactly. And ask good questions. Show you're interested in what other people have to say.
That's good advice.
And remember, building a personal brand takes time. It's an ongoing process.
I got to keep refining it.
And most importantly, be authentic. Be you.
Love that. Okay, let's take a moment to recap what we've covered today.
Sounds good.
We started with those professional phrase power tools.
Those were fun.
They were, and how choosing the right words can instantly make you a better communicator.
It's amazing how much of a difference a few words can make.
Then we talked about voice projection.
Posture, breathing, vocal variety.
It's a whole art form.
It is.
And we tackled the art of asking questions.
Clarifying, probing, strategic.
Learning how to ask the right question at the right time.
To get the information you need and guide the conversation.
And we even figured out how to disagree gracefully.
Using questions as our secret weapon.
Exactly. Then we went global, exploring the fascinating world of cultural intelligence.
Learning how to communicate effectively with people from all over the world.
It's so important in today's business world.
Absolutely. And we didn't shy away from those high-stakes meeting moments.
Like disagreeing with your boss or reclaiming stolen ideas.
We learned how to handle those situations with confidence and diplomacy.
And we created a strategic communication game plan, the Power Up Protocol.
To help us prepare for any meeting and achieve our goals.
But we went even further.
We did. We talked about building a strong professional presence.
Developing our personal brand and making a lasting impression.
Because communication is about so much more than just words.
It's about how we present ourselves, how we connect with others, and the impact we make on the world.
Beautifully said.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, what's one final piece of advice you'd give to our listeners?
Start small. Pick one or two techniques from today's episode.
Okay.
And really focus on using them in your next few meetings.
Don't try to do everything at once.
Exactly. It's about building those communication muscles gradually.
Like any new skill, it takes time and practice.
Exactly. And as you get better, you'll start to see amazing results.
People will pay more attention to you, your ideas will have more impact.
And you'll feel more confident and in control.
It's like unlocking a hidden superpower.
It is. The power of effective communication.
So, to all our listeners out there, remember, you have a voice.
And it matters.
And the way you use it can change the world.
One meeting at a time.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been so fun.
It has, and we'll be back next week with another episode packed with communication tips and strategies.
To help you navigate the ever-changing world of business.
Until then, keep practicing, stay confident, and never be afraid to speak up.
Your voice deserves to be heard. You could say something like, I appreciate the direction we're considering. Based on my analysis of our recent market data, I'd like to propose an alternative approach that might help us achieve our objectives more efficiently.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So you're not directly saying they're wrong.
Right. It's more about framing it as a suggestion.
A suggestion based on...
Again, an analysis.
Yeah, so it's not just your opinion.
Exactly. It's about being persuasive.
Okay, this has been so helpful.
I'm glad.
But all the stuff we've been talking about, it seems even harder in virtual meetings.
Well, for sure.
You don't have those visual cues, like you can't really read the room.
It's true. You miss out on a lot of nonverbal communication online.
So how do we adapt all these strategies for the virtual world?
That's a great question, and it's something a lot of people are struggling with.
Yeah, because virtual meetings are here to stay.
They are, so we got to figure out how to master them.
Okay, let's get into it.
All right, so imagine you're in this long, boring virtual meeting.
In there.
And you need to interrupt to share something important.
Ooh, tricky.
It is. You don't want to be rude, but you also need to get your point across.
So what do you do?
I call this the two-channel approach.
Two-channel?
Yeah, because you're using two ways to get people's attention.
Okay, I'm listening.
First, use the chat feature. Just a quick message like, time-sensitive input regarding topic.
So everyone sees it.
Exactly. It's like a little heads up.
Okay, I like that. What's the second channel?
Then you say it out loud. Pardon the interruption, but I have some time-critical information that might impact our current discussion.
Oh, so you're basically interrupting twice.
Well, Kinda, but it's more about being strategic.
Right, you're making sure everyone knows this is important.
Exactly, and it shows that you're aware of the flow of the conversation.
I like that.
It's a subtle way to take control.
Okay, that makes sense. What about those reply-all email chains?
Oh, don't even get me started on those.
They can get so out of control.
They totally can. Everyone's chiming in. It's chaos.
And then it turns into a virtual meeting from hell.
Yep. Been there. It's not fun.
So how do we bring some order to that madness?
Well, when things start to go off the rails, that's when you step up and become the leader.
The leader.
Yeah, you got to take charge and guide the conversation back on track.
Okay, how do we do that?
I call this the synthesis approach.
It sounds fancy.
It's not that complicated. Just wait for a pause in the conversation and then say something like, if I may, I'd like to summarize the key points raised so far and propose a potential path forward.
Oh, I see. So you're basically taking control and saying, okay, this is where we're at, and this is where we need to go.
Exactly. You're providing clarity and direction.
It's like you're the captain steering the ship back on course.
Exactly. And people will appreciate it, trust me.
Okay, listeners, I have one more challenge for you before we wrap up.
All right, bring it on.
Think about a specific meeting situation that you're dreading.
Like one that makes you nervous.
Exactly. Now, I want you to write down 3 different ways to handle that situation using the strategies we've talked about today.
Ooh, this is good practice.
It is. It'll help you build your communication muscle memory.
So you're prepared for anything.
Exactly. Now, let's talk about something a little bigger picture.
Right.
We've talked a lot about tactics, but what about overall communication strategy?
Right, like how we present ourselves in general.
Exactly. It's about being more than just a good communicator. It's about building a strong professional presence.
I love that. A strong professional presence.
It's about taking control of how people perceive you.
And making sure you're seen as the valuable asset you are.
Exactly.
So how do we do that?
Well, it starts with being intentional, being strategic about every interaction.
Both online and offline.
Exactly. Your online presence is a huge part of your professional brand.
Especially on LinkedIn.
Make sure your profile reflects your expertise, your accomplishments.
And don't forget to network.
Networking is so important, but it can be scary for some people.
It can be, but the key is to be yourself, be genuine.
Don't try to be someone you're not.
People can spot a fake a mile away.
So true. Just relax, be authentic, and focus on building relationships.
It's about connecting with people, finding common ground.
And remember, building a strong professional presence takes time.
It's an ongoing process. You're always learning and growing.
Exactly. So be patient with yourself and celebrate your progress along the way.
Yes. And never be afraid to ask for help or advice.
There are so many resources out there, like this deep dive.
Exactly. We're here to help you every step of the way.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the art of speaking up in meetings.
Wow, that went by fast.
It did. We covered so much ground today.
From power phrases to voice projection, cultural intelligence, those tricky high-stakes situations, building a strategic communication plan, and even developing our personal brand.
It's been a whirlwind of communication wisdom.
It has. But I hope our listeners feel empowered to take what they've learned today and put it into practice.
Me too. Remember, effective communication is a skill that anyone can learn.
It's like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets.
So keep practicing, keep experimenting, and never be afraid to make your voice heard.
Because your ideas matter.
And the world needs to hear them.
Beautifully said.
Thank you so much for joining us on this incredible journey.
It's been a pleasure.
And we'll be back next week with another deep dive into the fascinating world of communication.
Until then, keep speaking up, stay confident, and keep shining.
See you next time.